Once upon a time, she was the royal family's spark of laughter, the warm, red-haired duchess who made palace corridors feel a little less cold. Sarah Margaret Ferguson didn't glide into the monarchy like a marble statue carved for tradition. She tumbled in with jokes, a big grin, and the kind of relatability that made people lean closer to the TV. Britain adored her because she wasn't polished to perfection. She was human. She giggled. She blushed. She felt like someone you might actually meet at a village fete. And for a while, that made her look like the future. But fairy tales leave out the hard chapters. Duty meant distance. Prince Andrew's naval career took him away for long stretches, and what begins as a brave military wife's patience slowly turns into two separate lives lived under one roof. Sarah tried to make meaning of the absences: charity work, galas, speeches, causes. The more she pursued her own path, the more her informality jarred against the crown's careful choreography. Whispers about spending, raised eyebrows at tone. A sense, never said, always felt, that she didn't quite fit the mold designed a century ago for a different kind of duchess. By the early 1990s, the marriage was collapsing in private even as the titles remained firmly pinned in public. And then came a summer that scorched everything. August 1992. The world didn't just peek through the keyhole. It kicked down the door. On a holiday in Saint-Tropez with her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, the Duchess was photographed in moments that would become tabloid shorthand for scandal, topless on a sunbed while a companion, her financial advisor, kissed her toes as the children played nearby. Within hours, the pictures detonated across every front page in Britain. Fergie's toe-sucking shame became a phrase people still remember, for words that stripped away privacy, dignity, and any hope of quietly patching the cracks. Timing is its own cruelty. The monarchy was already reeling. Charles and Diana were unraveling in public, and the sight of another royal catastrophe unfolding felt like a storm too many. Anger, embarrassment, disbelief. In Balmoral, they said, the air went brittle. In living rooms, the public's sympathy cooled. Inside studios, interviewers sharpened their questions, and off-camera, handlers bristled as lines were crossed and tempers flared. The separation that had existed in practice became permanent in everything but law. Invitations dried up. A once beloved duchess found herself pushed to the edges of the frame. Life outside the royal bubble is loud and expensive. Without the soft cushion of palace resources, Sarah faced a harsher arithmetic. There were debts. There were deals. There were ventures that promised reinvention and delivered headlines instead. Former staff whispered about feasts and flights, and bills that didn't always get paid. She sold stories. She took endorsements. She sat on American talk show sofas and tried to explain herself to audiences who had moved on but couldn't stop watching. Reinvention is rarely graceful. Sometimes it's panicked. And panic makes bad choices look like solutions. In 2010, the cash for access sting felt like the lowest rung on a descending ladder. A journalist posing as a businessman recorded her offering introductions to Prince Andrew in exchange for money. It wasn't just poor judgment. It was a kind of televised self-immolation. The clip burned through public trust with merciless speed. Once again, she was not just a woman in trouble. She was a symbol of it. Someone who seemed determined to step on every rake left in the garden of public life. Then, when it looked like there were no more traps to spring, a fresh shockwave rolled through in 2025. Emails from 2011 surfaced, tying Sarah Ferguson back to Jeffrey Epstein even after she had publicly severed ties. The words attributed to her, praise, apology, familiarity, felt like acid dropped on an already corroded surface. She later said she'd been threatened, that the message was sent under pressure, that she was protecting her family. But reputations, once cracked, don't easily return to form. Charities backed away. Commentators found a new vocabulary for disappointment. Inside the palace, insiders muttered about the final humiliation, and you could almost hear the drawbridge lifting. If this were only the story of one woman's misjudgments, it would be sad enough. But it's also the story of a monarchy learning to exist in a century that refuses to look away. The camera never blinks now. The internet never closes. The royal brand lives and dies in a marketplace where gossip moves at the speed of shame, and Sarah Ferguson became a case study in how that market punishes any slip that reeks of entitlement or desperation. She occupied a strange no-man's land, too famous to disappear, too infamous to be fully embraced, welcomed when convenient, pushed aside when necessary. One day back in the pews for a family occasion, the next back on the front pages for all the wrong reasons. Behind the noise sits something painfully human. In every misstep there was a familiar motive, the desire to be liked, to be relevant, to be solvent, to be seen. She was the Duchess who sold the idea of being just like us, then got trapped in the very appetites and anxieties the rest of us recognize too well. Money runs tight, you make deals. Public love cools, you chase the spotlight. You tell yourself the next reinvention will be the one that sticks. But public forgiveness is not yours to schedule. It arrives late, or not at all. The monarchy's patience has limits even when it's wrapped in velvet. King Charles and Prince William present a modernizing front, streamlined, strategic, allergic to chaos. The Yorks, with their rolling trouble, don't fit the new silhouette. Even Queen Elizabeth II, renowned for her soft-spoken mercy, seemed to draw a private line long before her passing. Family is family, but the institution must endure. When insiders say Sarah is running out of lives, they aren't just being catty. They're admitting a hard truth about brands, royal or otherwise. If every second headline is an apology, eventually the brand is the apology. So where does that leave her? On some days, she is the woman the public remembers fondly, the mother who adores her daughters, the grandmother who beams, the charity advocate who can still fill a room with warmth. On other days, she is a walking cautionary tale, proof that the quest to be loved can twist into the habit of making ruinous choices. She once said she was the most forgiving person she knew. Perhaps she will need all of that forgiveness for herself, because the monarchy forgives only in footnotes, and the public forgives only with time and silence, two luxuries she rarely enjoys. Maybe redemption for Sarah Ferguson doesn't look like a dramatic return to royal favor. Maybe it looks like endurance, paying what's owed, declining the easy paycheck that costs a pound of reputation, staying out of rooms where the wrong people offer the right sums, choosing obscurity over one more round of exposure. Maybe it's privacy. Maybe it's the quiet work of living decently for long enough that people forget why they were angry, and yet the questions linger like a chorus that refuses to leave the stage. Can she truly recover from this latest chapter? Should she remain at Royal Lodge, a residence heavy with symbolism and expectation? Do the titles attached to Andrew and Sarah make sense in a world where trust is the only currency the institution can't afford to waste? Reasonable people will disagree, and loudly. That's the point. The modern monarchy is not just a family, it's a mirror, and what we see in it says as much about us as it does about them. What's undeniable is the fragility of royal life when it collides with the modern appetite for scandal. One summer in the sun became a lifetime of shadows. One terrible judgment call invited 1,000 more. The Duchess who once made Britain laugh learned how quickly laughter can become a wince. Perhaps somewhere inside all of this there is still a path back, not to the balcony, but to dignity. That would be a quieter story, with fewer headlines and more hard days stacked end to end. It would be the kind of story that rarely trends and often lasts. Tell me what you think. Can Sarah Ferguson rebuild something steadier than fame, something earned, something private, something that doesn't need applause to stand? Should she hold on to Royal Lodge, or is it time to step away from the stage that keeps demanding encore after encore? And in a system that trades so heavily on trust, do titles still make sense when trust has been spent? Share your thoughts, argue your case, and if you want more deep dives into the stories shaping the royal world, stick around for the next one.